Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. How is it going, everyone? Thanks so much for joining us. So, we do the spoof thing just before we start recording so we can get you revved up. So, here we go. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for joining this Friday morning edition of Down to Earth with Harriet Kamek. I'm so grateful that you took time out to join us this morning and that somehow you find it a good day. I mean, it's getting to be fall. I'm sorry, my voice is a little off, but it's getting to be fall here in the Midwest, and I can't begin to tell you what it feels like. It's like, okay, so we just went through this nightmare a few months ago, and could we have had some more time to deal with and enjoy summer so we don't have to, deal with fall? Are you ready? I'm kind of not ready for fall. I don't care about all that pumpkin spice stuff. And I'm seeing, as you drive around, you see people start dressing up for fall. And I'm like, I'm so not ready. I'm so not ready. I'm kind of like sad actually, because I kind of enjoyed summer and I know I'm going to miss it. I know I'm going to miss summer. But the thing is, for some reason, summer is the shortest season of the year and the most enjoyable because it's the season we get to spend outdoors more, and it's the season we get to really, really, really feel like, and really, really feel like, really just, you get to wear little clothes and, not as many clothes. But I sound wistful, don't I? I sound a little wistful. But yeah, what can I tell you? They made the choices for us, so summer is gone. So So I was just talking to my sister on the phone, and I kid you not, and she said something to me that it's been at the back of my mind, and I just haven't gotten around to uh, so I had to kind of like remind myself that I'm when she called me, it occurred to me that this was something I haven't talked about that I should talk about because it's been occupying the news here, especially here in Detroit, because Kanye West, everybody knows him, he who is married to the Kardashians, has developed this program that he calls Sunday Service. And he's a superstar, he's a rapper, singer. So he has a platform and he has access. So he used that same access so he could get into performing at Coachella. And, he has other people like him who he can invite to listen in to his service, Sunday service, whatever. And so he's developed this Sunday service thing where he is performing at and he plans to perform here in Detroit. Hey, thanks for joining, right? And he's performing here in Detroit. Are you believing this stuff? So I saw it running on the Detroit news and so on, but I wasn't really, really, really into it. But I was just talking to my sister now, and she lives in Maryland. So she said, "What do you think about that?" And I was like, "No, no." So, so I thought I would bring it to your attention if you missed it that Kanye West is now a preacher. Take that as you will. Let me sip some tea first. Because the truth is, just by saying that, it's kind of like the tea didn't go where it's supposed to go. But think about it and we have to think about it because what is happening in the Black church now is that people have become displaced and dismayed and have now decided that maybe so the church is suffering from low attendance, right? And you have to be careful with that because then that means you get desperate. So preachers across the spectrum are suddenly finding Kanye West and endorsing him. I think some of them might just be people who are paid endorsers. His people probably look through the most heavily attended Black churches in the country and said, well, go show up at that one. That will start the ball rolling for the others to find you significant. So I wanted to talk about it because I feel like we need to have this conversation in a serious way, right? We need to sort of talk about this because it's relevant. And the relevance of it is listening to a variety of other people and listening to people who suddenly have found religion, or people who suddenly say, well, I think I know what I want to do. I think I know what I found Jesus and suddenly I'm a preacher. We need to be careful of that, because what that tells us is that we got to be careful of all these random voices. The church is in a unique place today, especially for Black people. Most Black churches attendance is down. People are not going into services. They're wondering at the relevance, in fact, for a number of reasons, right? Many of which have to do with money. People gave all their money to the church, and then when it was time, the church, only the preacher was rich and the people were still poor. So people are like, well, what is the relevance of the church? They still need a faith experience. They still need to have a faith experience, but how that faith experience is treated and delivered is an interesting thing. So I thought I would, typically I do this on a Sunday morning. I talk about this on a Sunday morning on my the Sunday morning version of our show. But I felt like the time has come on this Friday morning with all that we have going on in the country. We won't talk about the impeachment inquiry or the whistleblower and all that stuff, as relevant as that is. Politically, it has grave political ramifications. That's a separate issue. But in talking about faith now and talking about Kanye West, let me just say a few things right here. I don't have a problem with anybody claiming to have had a Jesus experience or a Jesus encounter. I encourage it. It's the relevance of it. But I do have an issue. What I do find myself hesitating is trying to figure out, is this just another of Kanye West's ploys to circumvent and to get attention? In the past, we've seen where he has used his fame to gain attention for his many business projects. So is this just another one of those? I don't believe that Kanye West is any more a preacher than you are. I don't believe that. I believe he has mental health issues that he perhaps needs to go and figure out. In recent times, his behavior is such that you have to question his stability. Now, because if he were a regular person, you would have dismissed him. But because he's married to the Kardashians and is wealthy, you tend to accept that maybe he's on some sort of meds. He must be on some sort of medication. Somebody must be following to see what he's actually doing. Uh, oh, hi, you're in Toledo. Hello, DJ Damage in Toledo. Good morning. Much love, right? Much love to you. And I kid you not that it's amazing to me. Damage, come on. I mean, just think about it. Kanye West as a preacher. I think, and to a large extent, the preachers who are supporting him, they're doing so because of marketing. They think that Kanye West has a specific market that could come into their churches and perhaps would stay, or perhaps even just write a check. That's really what it is about. He's no more saved than the rest of us who say we go to church and had an encounter with Jesus Christ. I don't believe that. I think he's striving for, his wife even said it, that he's trying to heal himself. The real issue is that he's been subject to some traumas that he hasn't dealt with. And this is what I keep talking about. You've got to unpack it. You got to unpack your trauma. You have to deal with it, because when you don't deal with it, it's going to deal with you. If this were a regular guy, we would have dismissed him and said that guy is crazy. He needs to go sit down, or he needs to go be in a mental health situation. But what we find is that instead of that, what we're seeing is that Kanye is actually just flat out something is wrong. How do you just get up and start preaching and sing it all of a sudden with all the stuff? Anybody who has had an encounter with Christ knows that there's usually a time before you emerge, right? So you may have had the encounter privately, but there's usually a time between the crazy stuff and then good morning, and then the time that you emerge to say you've had a change experience. That's what his story is lacking, and therein lies the credibility. The credibility issue is timing. There is no timing to dictate and to show that when he had his last rant and when he now is conducting Sunday service, that the time shows some significant, meaningful change has taken place. And he can take all the stuff that he wants, but he knows it's true. There probably some drugs he's on that he's hallucinating or something, like seriously. Because I don't believe that. But the people, though, are vulnerable, and the people are looking for affirmation of their faith. And in looking for affirmation of their faith, here is someone whom they admire as somebody who has evolved and emerged out of the diaspora of blackness in America. And here he is espousing the same religious and cultural identity that they have, and he's throwing it at the public, at the same people, and saying, so in essence, he's affirming them. And the preachers know that. So it's slick marketing on them too, to say, well, we welcome Kanye. He says he's had a change experience. And the way they coach the words is they couch the words and things like that's between him and God, to make sure that they don't say, well, I literally affirmed them and I said so. So if there's a blowback 2 months from now, Kanye does something else crazy, they don't say, well, he did say so, I didn't. That was really between him and God. So in the moment, the preachers are looking for what? They're looking for promotion, and they are using his platform to advance their own platforms and to also attract a new audience. It's always about the Benjamins. Isn't it sad? But that's what it's always about. What about Snoop Dogg doing the gospel CD or God? For some reason, I believe Snoop Dogg. You know why? Because I see some change that has taken place with him. He still ain't married, so I'm wondering about that. But he doesn't have, the thing with Snoop Dogg is he doesn't have the myriad personality changes that we've seen with Kanye. Snoop Dogg tends to stay the same, right? He stays the same. His personality, it's the same. He doesn't go out on a limb and, act crazy. He's been the same for some 20 odd years. Whereas with Kanye, all we have seen, moments of stability and instability, all played out all at the same time. So you have to question his claim and his rhetoric of having had, of being saved. He grew up in the church, so repeating, it's easy for him to repeat and talk about Christianity and talk about the tenets of the faith. That's easy stuff. You can find that anywhere on the web. And if you grew up in church, you've had some resonance with that. But anybody who has had a change experience, you can tell. You ever seen someone who used to do drugs and now are helping others? Yeah, you can tell there's something in them that shines, that dictates that there is a change. You don't see that with Kanye. This is all just part and parcel of his issues that the people around him should manage him. But they're also doing it because everyone is gaining. It sells more of his songs, and he has a cult like following. Let's be clear. And a cult like following of young people who are going to believe. We're talking about Kanye West and his newfound religion, having Sunday service. So he has a cult like following of people who are going to believe everything he says anyway. And that's what the preachers are want to get to. Because that generation who listens to Kanye, they're not going to church. They want to have nothing to do with the current purvey of preachers. They think they're not real. They think that they're local, and they think that they are pilferers. So they want to have nothing to do with them. Oh, church, you do that? Are you crazy? You're gonna give them your money? Because that's all it seems like it's all about. And they'll tell you, oh, we have bills to pay. Well, so do I, but I don't have to give you my money. You figure out how to pay your bills. I'll make a donation, but don't come and tell me how much I'm to give you, because that's not what it said. So I'll talk about that on Sunday, talk about the dispensation of grace and how the dispensation of grace, what it truly means today. I'll talk about that on Sunday, because for some reason we have simply lost our way, and we have allowed so many other people to dictate to us and to tell us. And we've simply just sat back in our pews because we were too lazy to read the Bible. We were too lazy to develop our own faith and to figure out what does this mean for me, and the relevance and application to our own lives. We allowed someone else to do it. And in many stories and many spaces, it was allowable because we told ourselves that that's what church was, right? That's what the preacher is supposed to do. That's what the shepherd does. So you went everywhere the shepherd led, even if it meant going to drink his Kool-Aid and going to Georgetown. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, follow me. He said, listen to counsel, but he said, follow me. Notice the difference. You see where I'm coming from? And so in a lot of spaces, you can't help but ask yourself the question, what is happening to the culture? What is happening to this? What are the ramifications? What are the ramrods that are pushing people into finding alternatives to Christianity and alternatives to preaching, even when they grew up in spaces where traditionally they went to church on a Sunday morning. I never imagined that there would come a day when me and my children would not be getting ready for church on a Sunday morning. It was anathema to me that such a thing could have happened. But it did, because I too became disenchanted. I too could not associate anymore or see myself literally sitting there knowing as much truth as I did, recognizing that I had a responsibility to tell others about the truth, because I could see as I observed people coming in and out of the church and the church becoming a revolving door, I began to see that there was a need, an identified need that was not being responded to, that the people had, that the preachers were not willing to explore. They did not want to go down that road. They wanted to stick within the traditions of repeating the same sermons and saying the same things over and over, not recognizing that the people had changed, that the society had changed, and the people needed something different. They were not willing to do that. And so I too was sitting there like, this is no longer relevant. So I had to step away and allow myself to figure out, well, what is going on? And in figuring it out and allowing myself to figure it out, doing my own research, I came to the point where I said, you do what is good for you. So having found what was good for me, now I bring it to you on a Sunday morning, right? Because I recognized that, and I said this years ago, that I told one preacher and I told him to tell others, and he stopped me from telling others by telling them not to open their doors to me, that eventually so many scandals would have erupted in the church, that people would become so disenfranchised with the church that church would become a camera and yourself alone. And he looked at me, sitting in his princely kingdom, feeling like a king, that such a thing could never happen and would never happen. but it happened. Nonetheless, you see people walking in and out of the church every Sunday. The numbers get smaller and smaller to just a few, 50 or 100 people when you used to have 6,000. Now it's 50. It dwindles down to 100. But you're still telling yourself, you're still operating as if you're running this big, huge thing. So we have to look at some of the things that happened, right? We have to look at, why did these things happen? Well, come back on Sunday morning and I'll tell you about it, right? We'll go into detail about the dispensation of grace and what it means. Now, when I grew up, they used to say, well, grace is not a license to sin. But grace by itself is understanding why we sin, right? It's knowing, it's God foreknowing that we would sin anyway and providing a way of escape for us to access. So it's easy and for someone like Kanye, they're going to think that and know that. And they're going to rely on people thinking that to explain why they're doing what they're doing. Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to quite truthfully understand and quite truthfully get the issue that surrounds this whole issue, right? So do I think that Kanye is necessarily saved? I'm not so sure about that. But him preaching, I don't think so. That's just another psychological rant manifesting as preaching. And it's damaging to the church. So for all you preachers out there who are inviting Kanye into your pulpits, be very careful. You might just find yourself on the losing end eventually. It's not going to do you any good. Be very careful. Do you have to open up your pulpit? He can come and be a guest. Sit in the pews and hear you preach. Give him some time to say, hello, hi people, I'm Kanye, I'm just passing through, and so on. Or he can wave at you, but to give him the microphone and to sanction it, yeah, you will see. You should know that that's not true. But again, the preacher is looking at the money. At the end of the day, he has to collect the money because he has to be able to do what? To pay his bills and to maintain his lifestyle. So he's going to do what is expedient in the moment to do that. Part of the problem was that we allowed this ego to take over the church, where it became about the personality. And the personality dictated that this had to be huge. People wanted to see their names on buildings, right? People wanted to see their names and people coming to them like their Pharaoh, bowing down before them, oh gracious bishop. And so the ego got in the way, and they somehow stepped away from what they knew to have been truth and what they knew they should have done. And they might say, well, Harry, what did you expect me to do? In the moment, what it was self-fulfilling. It was about gratifying your own gratification and gratifying your own desires to be super and to be exalted. It had nothing to do with the purity of the message of Jesus. I draw a parallel to people going on a journey to Tibet, to go to the temple in Tibet and to live amongst the priests there who live without the things that we're comfortable with. I draw that parallel. Perhaps that is what is best. Because when I was growing up, the preacher lived in the parsonage attached to the church. And so that he was accessible to the people. Of course, churches were much smaller then, right? And then here in America, in urban areas, as people migrated from the South to come up, the big churches became a thing because large numbers of people moved into urban spaces and so on. And so they had to have big churches. Well, the bigger the church got, was the bigger the ego got. It became less and less about God, but more about form and function, self serving. And so, because of that, we have this history now of where do you find God? Because God got lost and the message of Jesus Christ got lost. After all, Christianity is about the message of Jesus Christ, isn't it? Sort of, isn't it? Not sort of, it is, right? That's what it is about. But that message got lost in the effluence of the day because all it became about was the personality. Hey, right? So now you have this mix of people. How does Kanye fit into all of that? He doesn't. He's just another self supporting, looking for promotion. And in all his, and you say that with the backdrop of his previous psychological breakdowns. There's something there. And yeah, you have friends, they're going to support you because they will think that you're searching for relevance and you're searching for your healing. You're looking for a way to explain. And this is just one of the many, right? And you have to be careful that if you yourself are being challenged, perhaps you're at that intersection where you're asking questions about faith and its relevance. Is it important now? But I still find that I have this question running at the back of my mind. Is God real? Is God not real? What does happen with that? And you find yourself at that intersection, and then you see someone like Kanye coming, and you, because you're familiar with him and familiar with his music and his language, you ascribe to what he believes. So you start following him because you think that he's a guide to where the truth is that you are searching for. Then you get into it, and in a few months, he switches his focus to some other stuff. And you're like, man, that's why you tell you can't do this religion thing because it's bad. No, it's not the religion. It's who we choose to follow. We're searching. But I have found that the best place to land your search is straight in the Bible. It begins and ends there. Alpha and Omega. The Bible even says so. The Bible says of itself that Jesus is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. That's where your search began. That's where it's going to end. There are people like myself who become the messengers of the faith. I think what we're looking for are messengers and the authenticity of the message from the messenger. The message may come through, but then you look at the messenger's lifestyle. Let me tell you something. So the story of Jesus, right? How Jesus came to be, right? When you look at it, you kind of, especially now with history, when you look at it, you realize that Jesus was true to what he said he was, who he said he was, and what he was doing. That's the benefit of history. You look at the current crop of preachers, you look at those who are preaching, and you're like, nah, it doesn't even look like it. Now, the Bible also says that God works through an imperfect man. And the only perfect man who ever lived, they hung him on a tree. That's what the Bible says. So you look at the current crop of preachers and you say, well, they're imperfect. You can't lay perfection on them. That's Jesus's role. And only Jesus occupied that space. But at the same time, you expect a modicum of something resembling the walk of Jesus. And that's where they fall. They're not demonstrating that, right? Everything is done before cameras to gain attention. If they're going to do a project in the community, they got to let the whole community know. They're letting the public know they're doing it to gain attention. It's not about that. It's about, I want to make sure that I get to where I am, and I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing because this is the right thing to do in this moment. Whether the cameras know or not is not important. The fact that the people know that they had a need and their need was met, that's what's important, because then the people will think, well, God answered my need. Do you see what I'm saying? So in other words, what did the preachers do? They took over the role of God. And that's where the whole problem fell. A lot of it had to do with socialization. When we look at the Catholic Church, you actually told men to live together without the benefit of companionship and expected that that was going to last. That was wrong. They draw parallels to the fact that Jesus had disciples who walked with Jesus, but they never lived with Jesus. They had wives and families. And there was a time when they went back to their families. And it was only 3 years. You took these men and you expect them to give up for a lifetime? You take women and tell them to give up for a lifetime, and you wonder why there wasn't decadence and why there wasn't all kinds of deviant behavior? Think about that. It was unrealistic in its application from the beginning. But there was so much noise around it, and the people who were doing it seemed to have more information and more knowledge on it. And we all nodded and went along with it for centuries, much to the demise of the faith and the people who have been hurt as a result of being sexually assaulted. That was our fault. The scriptures are always there for us to read. If you want illumination, read it. Especially those of us today. There are so many different interpretations of the Bible. You can seek amplification of what it means. You can seek enlightenment. You can seek illumination. It's just like studying anything else. You're reading something and you're like, well, what did they mean? You're reading an article on Time Magazine or the Washington Post or the Business Insider. What do? You go and you look it up. That's what we should have done, and we didn't. So we wouldn't go to the library, because back in the day you had to go to the library to take out the encyclopedia. But today you have this. Pick it up and research it and read it, right? So I don't think for any stretch of the imagination, I'm not fooled at all, that Kanye West is a preacher. By no stretch of the imagination. This is just another of his searches that he's searching for relevance, and he's especially searching for some sort of stability mentally that he can hold on to, because he doesn't even know himself, right? What is going on around him? He probably is propped up on meds to keep him functional because he suffered a traumatic experience. And now the trauma of it is something that the left behind trauma, the associative trauma, and the survivor guilt that he has to deal with are all at play. Now, most people won't bother saying it, but it is what it is. I just don't want anyone to be led astray by saying, oh, so Kanye is now a preacher. And that's exactly what the preacher was. Well, I'm going to go listen to it, man. I can't see him in concert, but he'll be down at the church. I'm going to go hear what he has to say. And they're teaching him. The people around him, they're making money off Kanye's appearances because it's keeping them employed. So they're going to go do some research on what preachers talk about and so on. And they're going to present it to him and say, this is what you say. And he's going to say it until he builds a cult-like following, and they'll be like, this is just another part of Kanye's business empire. You see the danger in it? In the meantime, people are out here thinking that it's actually truth. So when he does have a scandal, you'll be like, man, he just did it like everybody else. You followed the wrong thing. We followed the wrong thing. Because the right thing to do was to look at him and pray for him, that you hope he finds his peace and his truth, because clearly he's searching. But this is clearly not it. It would have been different, I think, if he had shown up and joined a church somewhere. I think it would have been more credible. That would have been credible. But to actually just, you had a psychological breakdown last year. And then this year you're doing Sunday service. Something is wrong. Where's the intermission? Where's the time in between so you get to dry out? Where's that at? That went away? Did that go away? That's the issue, the credibility. And so in the fast-paced 24-hour news cycle, all you do is see it and it registers. You're not thinking because your attention is distracted by something else. So you're not thinking it through like, but didn't he just have a psychological breakdown the other day? So what's with this? How you come from that to you just start preaching? It doesn't work like that. You have to go through a process, right? And the process is everything. So if you see Kanye coming to a church near you, ask yourself, why are you going? Want to see Kanye so you can post a selfie on Instagram? Or do you actually, you're curious to see if this is real? If you're curious to see this is real, I encourage you to sit back. You don't have to go in there to go see if this is real. It will be made true enough. And now you know what I'm saying is true because you know he's going to do another Sunday service and another one, and more preachers are going to join the fan wave until it happens. And then people will say, well, there goes Christianity. I told you about those preachers. That's what they're all about, right? Incredible stuff. So I want to put this into perspective. I really have no issue with anybody claiming to have had a Jesus moment or an encounter, but the credibility has to stand. And there are certain hallmarks that display whether or not the credibility happens. But without that, it's kind of like, okay. It's kind of like, okay, right? So, uh, so let's see how that pans out and stuff, right? Kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. It's just amazing to me because everybody just kind of thinks that, you know, and this is you all day, every day. Like, seriously? Like, I just want to know for real. And it blew my mind because I was like, nobody's, at first, when they said Sunday service, I thought it was a musical or something. I had no idea that he was actually doing this stuff. I had no idea. When I finally looked into it, I was like, oh, wow. Wow. No wonder they kept it low key because it's just another. So the people personified in a leader that they can acclimate to. People are looking for that. They don't want somebody who looks like he's a slick salesman who is going to take their money. They don't want that. They want someone who looks like identifiable. It's if you've ever been in a white evangelical church, I like how their services perform. They're just real low key. They're not flashy. The pastor's not they're driving a Bugatti or a Maserati. He's just a dude, probably driving a GMC just like the rest of us. I like how the low key approach. It doesn't mean that they don't have issues. They have many issues going on. There are scandals within their organizations just the same. But the personification and presentation of it encourages you to listen. Whereas over here with the black church, they're just flashy and way out there with it. So you're like, I don't even want to hear you because I can't identify with that. Do you see what I mean? So I want to invite you Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk about this. So if I have any voice left, I just got invited to a Michigan game. Do you see my face? All right. Am I supposed to say gold blue? Look at me saying gold blue. University of Michigan is playing a home game tomorrow. I think it's the first home game or something like that, or first major one. So I'll let you know. So join me Sunday morning at 10 a.m. I will be doing live on Twitter and Periscope. So DJ Damage and everybody, right? I know most of you don't go to church. You probably went out Saturday night. So you probably don't know if you should because you're going to feel a little something, some way. Gonna be all right, right? So make sure you join me on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We're going to talk some more about this. I just thought I'd stop by on Friday morning to let you know. Thanks so much. This is Harriet Kemick with Down to Earth. Be blessed, right? Make sure you listen to me on Spotify. So if you miss any of the shows that I've had this week, go to Spotify. Everybody has Spotify on their phone. Apple, if you have an iPhone, it's Apple Podcasts. The Google phones are a little different. The Android phones, you literally go into your Google store and download Google Podcasts. Search for me by name, you'll find me. And you'll find me. And of course, if you just happen to have any other podcast app on your device, you can listen in as well. Thanks so much, everybody from all over the world. I just want to tell you thanks. Grace and mercy be with all of us, right? Peace. Peace. Peace out. Everywhere. Peace. Have a good weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend. Go out and live some more. Do something. It's fall. Enjoy it. Right? Be blessed. See you Sunday. All right.